Hey everybody, before I get started with this video, I wanted to say a quick thank you to Joshins Thyssen, whose names I'm gonna butcher, and one other guy down here, Icarian Heights, who told me how to fix an issue I was having in the last video I made on Arch with screen tearing. It really was screwing up the screen recording a lot. If you're having a similar issue, all you need to do to fix it is go into like a super user account or root. And then if you're using PyCom or Compton like I am to render transparency in the background of your windows and things, what you need to do is go into etsy/xdg/pycom.conf, and right up here at the top there's a little setting here, backend. Originally this is going to say GLX. All you need to do is change this to XRandR, and that'll fix the problem that you're having. So thanks everyone for the help with that. If you're curious as to what that issue was, you can just check out my last video. Basically, I was just, every time I recorded, anytime I did anything on the screen, it was like creating tearing all over the place, and it was probably very, very annoying for people to watch, and I actually didn't realize it was an issue until I had already finished recording the video. It's fixed now, and today I want to take a quick, nice, simple look at a program that solved all of my problems regarding display resolutions and things, including a few that I didn't realize I had, and that's called XRandR. So let's get right into that. I've got Jameson Irish whiskey here, and it's pretty great. It tastes like a shortbread cookie. I was watching a review of it one time. Somebody said that, and that's all it tastes like to me now. It's very, very good. So first thing we need to do is we're going to install the program. If you're on Arch, as I am, it's going to be sudo pacman-s XRandR. This is going to be the same situation on Ubuntu. You're just going to do like, your standard apt install XRandR, use whatever package manager you have on whatever system you're using. But the thing is, XRandR should be probably installed on most systems. It comes with the Xorg package, and basically all of the Linux distributions use Xorg. So, well, I don't know, maybe that's not fair. I don't know that for sure, but I installed Xorg to get my system up and running, and I already had XRandR installed, and that was even on Arch Linux. So if you don't have it, go ahead and install it. And also something you might be interested in installing is there is a program called arandr, which basically just sort of acts as like a front end for XRandR. It's a bit more of a traditional sort of display setter program here. You can see it sort of lines up my displays and allows me to sort of manually arrange them the way that you might in a more traditional desktop environment, certainly much more similar to the way things work on macOS or Windows, and even, more full-featured Linux desktop environments. This program is simple enough that I'm literally not even going to talk about it, other than just to mention that, hey, there's a GUI sort of front end called arandr that would be pretty helpful if that's something you're interested in. Now, the problem that XRandR is going to solve for us is a problem that arises with window managers. Right now I'm using the awesome window manager, but if you're using BSBWM or i3 or DWM, whatever, you probably notice a lot of the more typical settings that you would find in just like a standard settings app on most systems aren't really here. So we have to find some other ways to get around that. When it comes to display settings, nothing is going to be quite as good as XRandR. This is a super popular program, and what it basically allows you to do is set screen resolutions, align screens, the positioning of separate monitors in different ways, and all sorts of things, all through the command line. And this is great because you can write little scripts to do things for you, to position all of your monitors in the right way. This is a very common thing people do, write XRandR scripts. So I guess first what we'll do is we'll take a look at sort of pretty basic setups for XRandR and a script to align all of our monitors the way that we want them to be on startup. And then I'm going to talk about how XRandR has solved like a little issue that I had with screen recording specifically for this YouTube channel, and we'll go from there. So first thing you do, if you just run XRandR on the terminal, you can see it's going to list all of your monitors here based on whatever type of input they use and all of the available screen resolutions for them. Now, I've intentionally used sort of weird, crappy, not necessarily like bad monitors, like these are fine monitors, but they're not your typical monitors. One of these only takes VGA input, and it's got a pretty low resolution here, 1366 by 768. It's hooked into the computer through VGA. Another one here is it says it's HDMI, but it's actually HDMI passed through a DVI port and then plugged into the monitor, because this monitor also doesn't even take an HDMI input, it takes a DVI. Basically, there's one HDMI out on the back of the computer. That is what this display here is connected to, and there is one VGA output connected to the back of the computer, and that is what this display here is connected to. So let's talk about just sort of basic controls. So what you can do is you can run XRandR -- output, and what this is going to let you do is select an output that you want to edit. So either it's going to be the VGA monitor in my case, or the HDMI 1 here. So if I had like 3 VGA outputs, they'd be VGA 1, VGA 2, VGA 3. Pretty self-explanatory. Maybe I'll jack with the HDMI 1 recording here. So let me go ahead and I'm going to select the HDMI 1 output. Oops. That's the proper syntax there. You do -- output and then type the name in parentheses. And then we're going to do -- mode. And what this is going to do is let us select like a display resolution. Right now we are using, it's using modes basically. So each one of these little display resolutions here is a mode that we can select. This is the name of the mode here. And there's also ways that we can add extra modes, because as you'll notice, both of these displays down here have a 1920 by 960 mode built into them. And I had to go in and manually add that because I like to record 1920 by 960 video on my YouTube channel. Or at least I have been recently. So let me turn on that display here so you can see it. This is going to look a little weird, but this is the HDMI 1 output. And this is outputting at 1440 by 900. Right now, all you're really going to see is an OBS window, but if I were to like, I don't know, shrink this down a bit or something, you'll see a little something more. Anyways, the important thing is this is the 1440 by 900 display resolution monitor here on this HDMI 1. But if I say I want to resize this monitor, only be outputting, let's say 800, or let's do 1280 by 1024. So if I run mode output 1280 by 1024, hit enter, it's going to fix itself. And now we're going to have a totally different screen resolution. Now, of course, I can fix this. Let me shut this off again by going over here and changing this to 1440 by 900. Of course, that's the default resolution right up here. And if I go ahead, I'm just going to turn the display on again so you can see whatever happens. I'm just going to get a black screen, but we'll see what we see in the OBS window. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And there we go. Now we have a standard 1440 by 900 window again, and that's good to go. So pretty easy to go ahead and change some screen resolution settings, but let's take a look at actually aligning monitors, because that's sort of a big deal too. If we run XRandR again, you can see once again we have 2 outputs, HDMI 1, VGA 1, and by default, our computer is, in the best scenario, just going to be sort of guessing where these should live in relation to one another, but we can do a whole lot better than that. Let me open up my XR script. Now, this is a script that runs and literally just sets things up for me. It runs as soon as I run my window manager, and that's it. It's not very difficult. It's like a startup script. It runs on startup. So what you can see is it immediately sets the screen resolution for both of my monitors here. It will set the output for HDMI to 1440 by 900 and the output for VGA 1 to 1366 by 768. And then you can see this other little command down here. And in my case, I just have dual monitors. So this is going to be a super simple setup. But what I'm doing is I'm saying XRandR output HDMI 1, and I'm setting that output to auto. What I basically am saying there is I'm not really saying that I want to use this as like the primary display or anything. I'm just saying whenever you're setting the output for HDMI 1, just do whatever works for you. And then I'm going ahead and I'm adding another output variable here, and I'm saying for the output of VGA 1, I want to always set it directly to the right of HDMI 1. And that's basically how this would work. I would set every display or every monitor in relation to 1, whatever I've decided my sort of primary display is. So, you know, if I had 3 HDMI displays or something, for example, I could run something like XRandR output, and we'll say use HDMI 1 as the primary, so just set that to auto. And then we'll say, give us another output, and we'll say for HDMI 2, go ahead and just put that to the left of HDMI 1. And then we could say for the output on HDMI 3, we could say put that to the right of HDMI 1. So you can see I'm setting up all three of these figurative monitors, but I'm setting them in proportion to one sort of primary monitor. And that's a good way to do it. Now, if we open up the man page for XRandR, which we had open a second ago, you can see there are settings in here for all of this. Let's search for right. So you can see here, these are the values that we can use for the output. We can use left of, right of, above, below, or same as. Now there's a few other ones and it gets a bit more complex, but these are sort of the basic things. There's also ways to rotate and reflect and do all of that. But for the most part, this is going to be what you need to worry about when you're setting placement of monitors. You can set monitors to the left of a display, to the right of a display, above a display, below a display, or you can have displays simply duplicate. So if I had two displays and I wanted them to just duplicate each other, really that only makes sense for me in like a projector type scenario where I just want to project whatever's on my screen to a larger display, which is not a situation I'd be in very often, but you have the option there, and of course you should. I mean, if that's the thing people want to do with their display, you should have the option to do it. Anyways, these are sort of the basic settings you'll need to set up the monitor, and that's about it for XRandR. At least the stuff that everyone talks about. I mean, there's plenty of videos about those features on YouTube. What I want to talk about is something super cool, and that's creating these sort of extra display resolutions that I can use on my system. Now, this is an issue that I've had recording videos for like forever. It used to be that I was using a MacBook, and, you know, it had a display resolution of 1440 by 900, or some of the Retina ones have even bigger, crazier, weirder displays. Basically, it just makes sense to be able to pick one display to record at for consistency's sake. You know, no matter what monitor I'm recording on, it's nice to always be able to get a like clean 1080 output, or in my case now, a 1920 by 960 output. That just makes editing better. It makes, you know, the YouTube channel, it would be weird if you turn on my YouTube channel, like sometimes it's a 1440 by 900 video, and sometimes it's a 1080 video, and sometimes it's maybe a 720p video for some reason. That'd be odd. So what I'm going to do to fix this problem is I'm going to use an additional program here called CVT. Now this here, if we open up the man page, is a program here called Calculate VESA CVT Mode Lines. I know that's a very weird and archaic name, but basically what it's going to let us do is add an additional display resolution that we can set here. Now, this program should also come with Xorg, so it should be there with XR. And if you have XRandR, you should have the CVT program. Anyways, the way this program works is actually pretty simple. What we want to do is we want to type in CVT, and then we just need to give it some options. And by options, I mean literally just the display resolution that we want to use. So in my case, I want to use a 1920 by 960 display resolution. But let's make it a little more funky. Let's do like 1280, or what's a good like film resolution? 1920 by 800, I think, is sort of normal film resolution. I think that works out to roughly 2.35 to 1. Anyways, definitely should be quite a bit thinner than what we have here. And then what I want to do is I want to add 60 to the end. What is the 60? That is the refresh rate of our monitor. If you have a monitor that goes all the way up to 120 hertz or whatever, and you want to take advantage of that, certainly, I mean, take advantage of that and type in 120 or 240 or whatever your monitor is. Your average monitor is going to have a refresh rate of around 60 hertz. So, you know, I mean, just sort of assume 60. If you don't know, type in 60, and that shouldn't create any problems. Anyways, when we hit enter, we're going to get an output here called mode line. And all you really need to worry about is starting with this first parenthesis, or, well, I've been saying parentheses this whole time. It's quotes. Anyways, starting with this first quote all the way to the end, copy and paste this. This is a mode line. And what this is going to do is it's going to let us add our new display resolution. What this is basically doing is it's setting the actual resolution here, 1920 by 800. And it's setting really intricate positioning details for every piece of the monitor so that it's positioned correctly and it looks right on the output. That's really all there is to it. Anyways, what we're going to do now is we need to add this mode to XRandR. So there's two steps to this. The first thing that we need to do is we need to type in XRandR -- new mode, and then we're just going to paste in that whole mode line. And then if we run XRandR, we shouldn't really see much of anything different other than you'll see virtual 1 here. This is sort of a monitor that doesn't exist. It's just like a virtualization monitor. And you can see it has a new resolution here in 1920 by 800 at 60 Hertz. And you can see it's got all the height and width values. And if you were to look at this mode line and like look at every little piece of it, you would see this is exactly what it needs to be. What you will notice is that under VGA 1 and HDMI 1, we don't actually have the option to use this display resolution yet. And if I were to try to do like XRandR, output for HDMI 1 and change the mode to 1920 by 800, it's not going to work. So what we need to do is now add this mode to each display that we want to use it with. So we're going to do XRandR -add mode, and we're going to select the display that we want to use. So I'll say HDMI 1, and then we need to just add in the name of the mode. Now up here, this first bit, 1920 by 800 _ 60.00, that is the name of the mode. And if I go ahead and paste that in, run the command, run XRandR again, you can see now under our HDMI 1 display, we now have the option to use a 1920 by 800 monitor. So, hey, thank you everyone for checking out this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.